while I was reading to you about the aurora borealis, the stories, sagas that have been around the northern polar lights. And it is always like that. If there is something happening in the world and there is no scientific explanation for it, as it used to be in the old days, then stories are being put around it or fixed to it. And that is exactly what happened around the northern polar lights. The oldest written story that we have for the aurora borealis, they come from China. That was written down about 2,500 years BC. And it was said that the mother of the Chinese emperor went out in the night, saw the lights up in the sky, did not have any explanation for it, but she was happy to see them, came inside, told everybody about the lights, and as the story says, she became pregnant and had a little boy 9 months later. That is one, let's say, quite a beautiful little story around it, but most of these sagas, most of the story around the northern polar lights, they are not as bright as that. As in Scandinavia, it was always said they create disaster. Women that were pregnant were supposed to be very careful going out. The child that she was bearing might be dying. Here in Iceland, it was said a woman that was pregnant and went out under the northern lights, the child that she would bring into the world would be cross-eyed. The other stories are very similar. It was, for instance, Ezekiel that wrote in the Old Testament declaring disaster because they even saw the northern polar lights all the way down to Africa and further. And that is when the sun is at its the peak of its cycle. It can be, this northern lights can be seen quite far to the south, as long as the skies are clear and it is dark. The only place really where there was a nice story around the northern polar lights that comes from Scotland, as they were calling them merry dances in the sky. Here in Iceland is another story, it started to exist in the 19th century, that there were heavy northern lights one night, very heavy the entire night, and then in the morning there was a very heavy and disastrous earthquake. And that is what they have ever said ever since, that they create earthquakes. Perhaps understandable, as we are living on an island. Some of you might have heard about it. Iceland is the hotspot on the North Atlantic Ridge, and this North Atlantic Ridge that is just ahead of us, that we will be driving onto, they have been measuring in the past 10 years 14,000 earthquakes. Very wobbly area. But that is just as it is here. We have to live with it, and earthquakes have always taken place in this country, not only earthquakes, but volcanic eruptions. And we have to get out the light pollution of the city. That is why we are driving a little bit further on out into Reykjavik, where there is no electrical light or very little, and we might have a good chance of seeing the dancing lights.
Ja, det är klart.